This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and today I'm going to expand on this idea of we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Now, if you type into Google NLP communication model, this will help expand a little bit further on to what I'm explaining. There's a little bit of rain in the background. I hope you guys can't hear that too loudly at all. It's because I'm in my little office, is right next to the roof. Anyway, so what I'm mentioning around the NLP communication model is that it actually shows that the way that we filter reality is through an external event occurring. It could be anything from seeing a car, rear ender, right through to smelling something, right through to watching sport or hearing something. It's just an external event, and then after that external event, we run it through what's called our meta programs. Now, I've discussed these in length, especially in my webinars on the Coaches Circle. But basically, these are different frames of reference that we use to understand reality. And then after we run it through, but following from that, there's like 60 of them, and we often have 5 driver meta programs. And what that means is basically these programs are ones that we're just really, really blind to the other side. So an example of that is matching and mismatching. Some people that just try and match all the time to feel, for whatever reasons, it could be a whole bunch of reasons, but it could be for a safety thing, whereas the mismatch, it could be because they like to see themselves as individuals, and that allows them to be different to their siblings when they were younger, and now they still do it as they're an adult. A whole range of reasons. Then we run it through our values, beliefs, language, decisions, memories, time coding. Basically all of these things that allow us to sort of try and understand reality all over again, and then we run it through distorting reality, deleting certain parts of that event, and then generalizing certain things around that event. And it goes all the way around. So just type in NLP communication model, you'll sort of see what I'm getting at a little bit more with that. And then the further research you do in this, and especially those of you that listen to this that are in the Coaches Circle, you'll really understand it or have done a lot of study in this space. It's like, we don't see things as they are or as it is. We see things as we are. And so if we are had, not have these programs, but if we are had by these programs, which means that, that's just how it is. We see it through one restrictive particular lens, and they're all restrictive if they don't have any flexibility in the moment to be able to change as the moment needs. Then we're seeing reality as we are, not as it is. An easy example is somebody who leans into something that's more pessimistic rather than optimistic. What's going to happen is that they will see something and think, well, that's quite pessimistic, but they're seeing it as they are, not as it actually is. It's just an event, or it's just a thing, or it's just a moment in time, but they are pessimistic, so they're seeing it as that and then labeling it as pessimistic. And so this is the easiest way to understand that we don't see things as they are, we see things as what they mean to us. And another thing around that, you start looking at like a chair. We don't look at a chair, we look at it and think, hey, that's a chair. We look at it and go, it's a seat, right? It's the same with a car without an engine is not really a car anymore, is it? Because you can't use it. A car is to get you from somewhere to, A to B, or C or D, or hopefully Z. But in that circumstance, if it doesn't have an engine or if it doesn't have 4 wheels, we're like, well, it's kind of a car. It's not fully a car, right? Because it doesn't have a use to it. And so this is the interesting thing, is that we start to actually see the use of things as opposed to what they are. We see what use they are to us, and we have to be very mindful and very careful not to do this with people, right? And especially if you're in a space where you're dealing with any form of sales and you start to look at people as numbers. And this is where, when businesses start getting run by like bean counters or managers, and this is the thing, is that we shouldn't be managing people. We should be leading people and managing systems. It's very, very different. Leading people, managing systems, not managing people and leading systems. That's when we start to really neglect the humanity of the human in front of us, and we start to see them as a cog in the wheel. And we look at them objectively. We see them as numbers, as opposed to understanding the human behind that. And we're neglecting the human experience, the life circumstances that this individual is currently undergoing and inside of, or whatever it may be. And because of that, then we really, really shorten our ability and make it a smaller pool of understanding everything that goes into this. And this is where, if you've heard me talk about integral theory before, allows us to broaden our perspective. All of the models that I talk about all through here, the Enneagram, integral theory, like Jungian archetypes, all of this stuff is to help us literally broaden our perspective, move out of our personality and move into our essence. And essence, you can call it spirituality, you can call it your divine being, you can call it whatever you want. It's literally who we are. It's our potential outside of our personality. And this is where I refer to personality again and again and again, is that personality comes from the word persona, which is Greek for mask. It's a person, it's a character of the play, right? And so we have to decide, does that mask have me, or am I choosing to lean into this program, which is, something that I learned as a kid to be able to understand how to survive in reality. And so we can look at it for face value, that's fine, and be like, well, that's just how I am. It's like, well, that's how you choose to be. It's like, no, that's not it. That's how I've always been. It's like, yeah, I know, which means that you don't have any fucking flexibility and you're not mature. Because that's how you've always been. It's like, what, you decided when you were 12 how you should be when you're 30? How the fuck does 12-year-old you know better than 30-year-old you? Like, listen to that. You go, oh, this is how I've always been, to a fucking 12-year-old. And 12-year-old's like, so I should set how I'm meant to be right now. And choose my career and, go to be 35 and have a fucking shitty job, because everyone that was 35 had a shitty job, and that was what being an adult was. It was not liking your life and trying to live for weekends and then building a home, and off you go, just doing the same fucking shit that you hated, that you used to see everyone else do. I had this conversation with, one of my lovely clients before, around going like, we often see the things we don't want, but because we haven't given reference to what an adult is around that, we end up fucking building it because we don't know what an adult should be. So we just use the models that we were given, which were our caretakers. I love parents. Love them. At the same time, they didn't fucking know what they were doing. They were working off their parents' programming or their caregivers' programming. And so if I don't actually sit back and look at it, then there's a potential that I'm still just walking around with frames that worked for my great-grandfather. Like, why does that work now? Eat your dinner before you leave the table. It's like, we're not in a famine. We're not in a space where we're having to eat just pasta, rice, and potatoes because that's the only thing that can kind of grow, or it's cheap, or bread's cheap, right? And that's different. Well, there's starving children in Africa. It's like, making me fat's not going to help that, right? And so it's seeing that these frames of reference, money's hard to come by. All these frames are literally frames of reference that were passed on. This is actually what's called a meme, which is basically the pass on of an idea or thought from generation to generation or person to person. And so a lot of the time we're literally just walking around with memes. I mean, people thought internet meme, but that's because it gets passed around so quickly. So meme was coined by Richard Dawkins in the book The Selfish Gene in the 1970s. And so there's a bit of thunder, right? And so in that space, this idea of the meme is that there's a lot of us now still walking around in the fucking 21st century with things that helped our great-grandparents try to survive the Depression. Like, think about that. You got to sit back and look at it and go, hang on a sec, if I lack flexibility in this space, then I'm not going to be able to have the ability to make my own decisions around what's required in this very moment, because that's just how I've always been. It's like, well done. You're as smart as a fucking 12-year-old. And this is the difference between going to work. People are like, oh, I've got 20 years experience. It's like, no, Philip, you don't have 20 years experience. You have 1 year experience 20 times. You never fucking done anything different. You haven't evolved. You haven't questioned what you're doing. You haven't pulled it apart. You haven't pulled yourself apart. You never did that sort of stuff. So therefore, you've done the same year of experience 20 times. That's very different. And so with all these frameworks in place, we start to see that we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. And that fucking changes everything. Team, that's it. I'm out. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found this podcast beneficial. Thank you for being patient through the rain and the thunder. I think there's a song that makes that noise. Anyway, I'm going to finish up here. If you found this podcast beneficial, it would mean the world to me if you'd pass it on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. Otherwise, that's it. I'm out. Until tomorrow. Peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
To be everything at once, be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.